afternoon, good evening, everyone, no matter where you're dialing in from. I'm Mark Moschetto. I am the founder and CEO of Kickmotor, a marketing communication consultancy, and I am so proud to be your MC for today's webinar, Building High Performance Teams. Now, we have a ton of content that we want to get through today, so we are going to waste no time and jump right into it. Who's on your call today? Well, we're going to have three amazing experts. We've got Susan Richards, who is the founder of Sapient Insights Group. We've got T. Thorson, who's a co-founder and leadership catalyst from Lathos. And we also have Mary Ellen Claggett, who is also a co-founder and leadership catalyst at Lathos. Tremendous in the field experience and expertise as leaders, as individuals who have built trust within organizations, and then also as amazing consultants. So we've got lots of background, we've got lots of great stories we're going to share to kind of make this stuff come alive for you. And that's going to be your dream team for today. So you're in for a great session. Now, Sapient Insights Group, for those of you who don't know, an organization that does consulting, research, and advisory services really across all industries, with a strong focus on some of the topics we're going to be talking about today: leadership, culture change. How do you transform an organization and realign it around the agility necessary to be successful today? Of course, you probably know us from our annual HR technology study. That we are in the thick of that today, so make sure you hit our website. We want to make sure that we are able to capture your voice and your insights on what are the topics and trends you're dealing with today, and then what are the pieces of technology that are helping to move the needle the most for you. Allow me to do a little bit of table setting and kind of where we're at in the marketplace. So there's a lot going on in the world, right? And we covered in our last webinar in this series where we talked about there's eroding trust kind of across the board in organizations. There's eroding trust with leadership. Engagement is down at work. Overall satisfaction is on the decline. So if there was ever a time where we needed strong leadership, not just leaders in the literal sense, but having a leadership mindset up, down, and sideways through the organization, it's today. Yet take a look at that first statistic from LeadX Leadership Development Benchmark Report. There's been a 70% year-over-year decline in both development budgets and leadership development staffing levels within most organizations. It's a staggering decline. That doesn't mean that you have to be dead in the water. We're going to give you some great tips today on, even if you're feeling that pinch, how you can just get the ball, moving downfield. But another piece that we need to talk about is the percentage of millennials. 69% of millennials in the workforce feel they don't receive adequate leadership development opportunities. And it's significant within that demographic, within that cohort, because they are rapidly becoming the largest cohort within the workplace. So if we're starting to lose them, if we're starting to feel like, if that demographic is starting to feel like businesses are not investing back in them, we're going to continue to fight some headwinds as we try to adapt to what's going on today and grow our respective organizations. And, as HR leaders, it's so important that we speak the language of business, right? So let's take it right down to bottom line. 7%, -7%. That is the typical reduction in annual profits that an organization can expect to experience if they're not creating opportunities for their leaders and their teams to develop and grow and thrive. But it's not all bad news. There are some tremendous opportunities. There are some tremendous lifts to your business when you get this stuff right. Organizations are 1.8 times more likely to meet or exceed their financial targets when they're able to deliver on this. And more importantly, on that human outcome side, they are 2.1 times more likely to achieve positive human outcomes when they're able to follow this model. So it's so critically important to make sure that you're embracing creating trust, you're embracing leadership, and you're infusing those leadership qualities throughout your organization. All right, so we're going to jump right in. And before we talk about creating a leadership mindset, let's just get grounded right out of the gate. Like let's define the concept, let's define the term. So I'm going to leave it up to our experts. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we've actually moved away from the concept that a leader is tied to formal authority, and everyone can step up to leadership. And it's actually very exciting that this is happening. When you look at leadership mindset, you're looking at how does a leader approach their role? How do they make decisions? How do they interact with others? And you can read a plethora of resources on growth mindset, on transparent communication, on dealing with conflict. But when you take it down a level and look at teams, which is what we're going to do today, it's a team mindset is when every team member feels empowered, they are capable of making decisions, and they know what the end game is. They know the vision, they know the goals, and they are driven to actually actively contribute to them. When you're in the midst of it, it's golden.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what that also does is that actually creates the environment, right? And that's what's really important to, why do you even want a leadership mindset? Because when people do what Emmy just shared, you're going to naturally increase the cohesion of that team. And by increased cohesion, what happens then? It actually impacts the team's morale. It creates greater loyalty and actually productivity. And in turn, what does that do? That actually attracts talent. It makes people want to partner with the team, and it aligns folks, whether it's external customers or internal stakeholders, with what the team's values and goals are. So we have this metaphor of kind of like noses pressed up against the glass. How do I be part of that team? When you've got that environment, you know you've got a leadership mindset and a cohesive team.
Oh my gosh, as you guys were talking, I was envisioning one of an organization that we do a lot of work with. It's called 321 Coffee. And they are this fabulous organization based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And I was talking with one of their co-founders last week, and she said, we've got 250 people on our waiting list to come to work for us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how many of us would love to have that problem when we're talking about talent? So they're living their values, and they're seeing this wonderful effect of having empowered leaders, and everybody being a leader, and everybody being empowered, and everybody being able to step up. It really does work, folks.
All right, so now that we've kind of laid the foundation and we've got the definition for it and a couple of examples, how do you go about creating this mindset within the organization and specifically among team members, right? Like if you're not there today, it's a bit of a process, right? So take us through, how do you get there? How do you even start that up?
But it's funny because we've all mentioned the word team a lot already. And I think it's really important also to ground folks on what do we mean when we say team, because it doesn't need to be just an internal single functional team, right? And you can be a member of multiple teams, whether it's a project team along with your function team. One of the things we love is when it's called kind of a hybrid team, where you might have some external partners in addition to internal. So team can be a variety of things. And the way we look at it is, think about it from a sports metaphor perspective, right? A quarterback is not going to be the only reason why a team scores a goal, even though it might get a lot of highlights, might get a lot of, press and everything. If the team does not work collaboratively, cohesively together, with the glue being a single objective or a goal. And I think that's the way you want to look at it. What's the glue that's holding us together? And whatever that is, if we all agree, we're a team. And I think that's one piece of it. We talked about kind of the environment already, in the way of, I might be at a lower level than Susan on a team, but we're still team members. And I still have accountability to be a leader and have my mindset be in the same space as Susan might be, even though hierarchically she's at a different space. So I think that's one other critical piece of an environment of a team, is that. And the second is, does everybody have the collective, call it a system of the team, in its best interest? This is not about me getting my way in order to get to the goal. It truly, a team is going to be one where we say, we all agree what's for the good of the whole. And the reason we spent a little time on that this morning is because that is also foundational to anything that you do with other people.
So yeah, T and Emmy, I think you guys have some things to dive right into from a practical and pragmatic perspective that we like to talk about, because we want to give folks things that they can actually take away and practice on after the conversation today.
Yeah. And some of this might not seem like it's super new to you, or it may say, well, that's pretty simple in concept, but it's not easy to remember all the time. So the thing, I'll kick it off, is vision, right? As a team, where are you sharing the vision? How do you ensure that whatever your vision of a team as a team is either cascaded from the corporate vision, or you know how your role supports that overall vision? It's so important to make sure that everybody understands what their roles are. You mentioned earlier, Mark, that when people are touched by an organization and they feel like they have been impacted, that their productivity increases too. What we say is when people feel valued and they know that the work that they're doing matters, then Katie, bar the door, man, lots of things are going to happen. So sharing the vision has got to be one of the first steps to make sure everybody understands that. So that's my big one.
Well, once you share the vision, you know, it's really important that you have clarity of roles and clarity on expectations, because too often a team member may be sitting there going, yeah, I'm totally in, and I don't have a clue. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how to do it. And using a model such as RACI, where, let's see if I can do it right, responsibility, accountability, support, consult, and informed, is a great model. Thank you. The applause can start now.
It's a mouthful, Emmy.
But it is a great tool to use to say, hey, does everybody know their role?
Mm-hmm.
Do they know who they need to bring in? Do they know who they need to be part of creating the vision? And you want to create that culture that has accountability. So as a leader, you model the behavior you want to see. You're transparent in communications. You hold regular meetings to discuss things like, are we on target? Are we addressing issues? Do we need to change plans? And always, always, always keep the communications open.
So my favorite one is collaboration. And I'm living this right now, along with my colleagues on the call, and some of our colleagues at Sapient. Collaboration can be messy. If we have worked independently, or we've not been part of a team in a long time, this whole idea of collaborating can get a little uncomfortable. And it requires us to sort of slow down and make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about, and that we define terms, and that we all get aligned and on the same page in order to be able to go very fast as we move through the process, and everybody aligning around that. And I know teams go through this on a regular basis. You know, I see it at the beginning of every team. And when we do it right, when we truly collaborate, there's absolute unlimited richness in what you can create, and the things that you can innovate around.
You know, one thing that sometimes happens is events will create new teams and force us to make changes in the way we do business. And for me, I go back to 9/11. I still can be in that day, but what was really amazing about it was after the event, you saw folks who were in totally different, I'm going to say silos in this case, but in divisions, who really came together. And because we all had a common purpose and a desire to be and do something. And so you saw some massive amount of critical thinking and problem solving and brainstorming, spontaneously regularly scheduled meetings. It was just this culture that said, we need to find solutions. We need to make it better. We need to think of new ways of doing things so that we can actually come out ahead. And it allowed all the team members to experience being part of the team, being able to input into creative ways to do things differently. It wasn't going to be same old. It included everybody. And the really neat thing is it continued well past the event. So when you're able to change a culture, no matter what causes it, it can always be for the good.
What are some of the common, barriers to performance to achieving that breakthrough that you folks typically see? And then, like, more importantly, how do you break through it? Like, what's your way through it and around it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we were talking about initially, the silos of functions, right? That's what everybody thinks of when they think of silos. I like to propose another thing, which is silo mentality. So think about it as bringing into a conversation or a team or a situation a bias of negativity, a conscious bias, an unconscious or a conscious, I can never say that word, conscious bias that you are wanting to influence and make sure. I mean, you're living in your own silo. And so that's one thing that can happen a lot. The obvious ones too, when you have a weak or an immature, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it's just factual, an immature leader of a team, a true hierarchical leader of a team who's either weak or just not experienced enough. That can be a barrier. I think another couple of things are when teams fear repercussions of saying something. It's the infamous emperor has no clothes. Well, I'm not going to say that, right? Because if I do, something will happen. So that can actually be a huge barrier to having a leadership mindset and a cohesive team. You talked earlier, Mark, and I know that we're going to be sending, which I'm glad, the link to the highlights from last time. We spent a lot of time talking about trust, so we don't need to repeat it here, but trust, trust, trust. Lack of trust is going to create a problem, as Susan shared last time. It is foundational to the start of anything. So what are some of the solutions? Obviously, you have to build the trust first, but I think the other thing is, holding what we'll call team building environments. And this isn't like a group of trust falls, but these are the open conversations on what gets in the way. Where are we struggling? How do we want to support one another? I think sometimes when barriers happen, people always look to the leader, the hierarchical leader of a team and saying, what are you going to do about this? Instead, if everybody's embracing a leadership mindset, it's how do I hold myself accountable and how might I hold you accountable and you hold me accountable. It doesn't just have to come from the leader of the pack, so to speak. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah. And T, as you were talking, the word courage comes to mind again. So having the courage to speak up. And on the flip side of that, one of the things that gets in the way is fear of failure. I worked for a long time in those professional services environments that were up or out. And you had to be really safe in getting up the ladder. And if you made a mistake, you could very well be out immediately. So, so creating a culture where it's okay to fail in a project or fail in something that you try, and recognizing that just because you fail at something, that doesn't mean that you are personally a failure. Yeah.
And I'd also include situational awareness. I mean, our brains have a negativity bias, and we are always going to look at what didn't work and set a bar that is so high that we just keep going deeper and deeper in the hole. And especially when you look at your team, I mean, be aware, are they under stress? Do they have this workload that never ends? You have burnout, you have performance problems, you have morale problems, you have, hey, I don't want to come back into a hybrid situation. I mean, there are a lot of things out there that people are struggling with, and it's really important to monitor workloads, to support where you can for stress management, encourage healthy work-life balance, and recognize that you'll never be balanced, right? It's always going to go up and down, but it's important that you have some up in the life part, because that's the only way you're going to get energy to continue the workload. The other thing to be aware of is, especially as we look at across the workforce, generations, cultures, you name it, we all come in with different stories and different perceptions. And it's really important to recognize, to actually have a conversation that says, what's your perspective? What does this mean? How are you seeing this? Because we want to respect one another. We want to actually build on the experiences and knowledge a team member has. This is why sometimes really making sure that team members understand the why of your decisions, the why you're doing whatever you're doing. It is actually kind of critical because you need buy-in if you want to have a culture of a team that is totally in and going forward.
Yeah, so we could tell you stories all day long about what the barriers are. I have one more that I think is really important, and then I want to give you something that's super pragmatic. This is really basic, y'all, and I know that most of you know this, but governance is so important when
Yeah.
we're working with our teams. The cadence and the approach that we take as leaders when we're running the business can be applied to how we work with our teams. So consider your audience, consider the timing, figure out what you want to say and what you want as an outcome, and then how you're going to communicate, and use that as a framework as you're getting ready to work with your teams. What am I really trying to get out of this team? And then the other thing that I'm going to say is you got to meet with folks. And I'm not talking about meeting for just meeting's sakes. I want you to be intentional about the way that you meet with your teams. And examples of the kinds of meetings that I'm talking about are one-on-ones. Those are incredibly powerful and incredibly important. Meet with your direct reports, offer skip level meetings. If you are a very confident leader, and you want to really empower your teams, give them the opportunity to talk to your boss. Schedule and conduct those all hands meetings, talk to your stakeholders, and also meet with your cross-functional partners. And you'll notice that we say we schedule those meetings and actually keep them, because again, it only takes 1 or 2 times for you to cancel things and your team will shut down on you.
Also want to ask the question, what are some of the other strategies or approaches that a leader can take to create that open and inclusive environment? And I think inclusive, maybe we could unpack that word a little bit, right? Because I think that within an HR context, it's kind of taken on meaning of its own, but maybe we could unpack that within the broader discussion and share some of those insights with us.
With a focus of leadership, a lot of words are just started to grab a hold and people use them for everything. So thank you for calling that out, Mark, because, as we've said, we've obviously, as Susan said, been collaborating for a while together and sharing stories and getting to know our backgrounds. And we've always been inclusive leaders, right? When you look at diversity of thought, you look at diversity of background, you look diversity of environments, all of that. And yes, the other demographic diversity is as important, but let's not just make it be a checklist of those things. And so inclusivity, huge. And, when you talk about what can a leader do, what I'd actually like to offer an additional thing is a team has responsibility to itself as well. So what can a team do to create that environment? And part of it is just literally working together, right? Co-creating things, whether it's your vision or your mission or your goals. Having the pack where I take a turn in running a team meeting, and then Susan comes in and takes a turn. It isn't about, and I'm talking about in our environment, but as an example, the hierarchical leader does not always have to be front of the room. So where you can spread the wealth a little bit, it will help leaders grow. It will help the trust increase. It will give people opportunities to practice and try, like some of the things you said, Susan. It's okay. I failed. I messed up this one. Let me try it differently next time. Hold it lightly as a team. Give each other grace. So that's what I would say from a team environment.
So I'm looking at our clock. We got great feedback on like our fire round question last time. So I'm going to do it one more time. So going to go around the horn. Where do you have a great example of a turnaround? We shared some of them during the discussion today, but if you've got one more 30 seconds each, you can throw out, let's hear it. So we're going to start.
Okay.
Emmy.
I'll be fast. So early in my career, major organizational change. The division chief got fired for telling us what was happening. And that fear came on down on who goes out the door next. And really, a lot of transparent communication, talking to one another and doing the dreaming of what could it be. we managed to get through that and came out all the stronger for it.
Love it.
Go next.
Pete,
OT.
Pete, you're up.
I inherited a team with a culture of what I'll call hands-off dictatorship. So a handful of employees and 50 consultants supporting them, where the consultants were required to have the knowledge as well as the slideware, yet the employees did all the presentations. Doesn't work. And so actually bringing everybody in, role clarity, collaboration, had the leaders of the two respective consulting firms, because they were different firms as well, sitting at my leadership table, made sure we created sub-teams and really drove home collaboration. It was beautiful. And everybody felt like they had a piece and were valued in the success of the organization.
Nice. All right, Susan, you're up.
So, I had a team that didn't talk to each other. The tech team didn't talk to the functional team, and nobody talked to the steering committee. So I did a fruit basket turnover, and I mixed everybody up, co-located them, made the functional folks sit with the technical folks and actually talk to each other. And we were amazed at how much we were able to accomplish in a very short time. So, you know, just having conversations and talking to people, making them human. You know, it's not just my integration writer or my report writer. That person has a name and they have feelings, and just having conversations with them and going to lunch or having a cup of coffee makes all the difference in the world.